He caught a student smoking in the bathroom and made the student jump from the 8th floor to the ground.
Go on, jump.
No, I don't want to jump.
When he saw students causing trouble at school, he would walk up and punch them without hesitation, and if a teacher disobeyed his orders, he would immediately throw them out on the spot. The reason the principal managed the school this way was simply because the school was in complete ruin. The walls were covered in graffiti, students who disliked each other fought whenever they met, female students were frequently harassed, teachers who tried to step in were mocked instead, contraband was openly traded at the school gate, some students even carried handguns into class, and there were constant cases of people being carried away on stretchers. Mentioning this notorious school gave headaches not only to teachers and parents but also to the mayor himself, who was fully responsible for it. The school ranked dead last in the state, with only a 38% pass rate on basic skills tests, and if it failed to reach 75%, the state government would take back control, which would directly threaten the mayor's political career. Yet the only person who could change this desperate situation was someone the mayor least wanted to bring up. 20 years earlier, there had been a teacher named Clark at the school, whose unconventional methods had kept his students at the top of the state year after year, but his temper was notoriously strange. Disgusted by shady deals between the principal and the government, Clark once jumped onto a table, humiliated the principal by rubbing his backside on him, and even slapped a banknote onto his face before walking out without a care. As a result, he was demoted to teach in a remote small town, and under the mayor's leadership since then, what had once been an outstanding school deteriorated into the disaster it was now. The principal back then was none other than the current mayor, who, despite his reluctance, had no choice but to compromise when faced with a threat to his political career. Helpless, the mayor sent the director of education to find Clark, and as expected, Clark immediately refused without a second thought. Fortunately, the director knew Clark's rebellious nature and used reverse psychology to provoke him. "You've talked so much all these years, but you've never actually accomplished anything. At this rate, your whole life will amount to nothing. Do you really want to stay this way forever?" These words instantly ignited Clark's stubborn pride, and he finally agreed. But when he returned to the school he had left so long ago, he was completely stunned. The entire place was falling apart, with walls covered in violent and pornographic graffiti, nothing like a school at all. To prepare for the arrival of the new principal, the old one had already laid out a series of plans, but Clark immediately shut him down, harshly berating him. "If you had been capable of managing this school, I wouldn't be here today. Your students can't even pass basic skills tests, which means they're nothing but illiterate. From now on, forget all your old rules. My word is the law. There is only one boss here, and that's me." He ordered the teachers to write down the names of every troublemaker, had the janitors clean the graffiti-covered walls, promoted capable teachers while demoting the incompetent ones, and told anyone dissatisfied that they were free to leave. The mayor had given him less than a year, and if the school failed to reach a 75% pass rate within that time, the state government would take over and replace them all, meaning everyone now faced the same challenge. To get the school under control, he even brought in a professional security team, fully aware of the chaos he was about to confront. Soon after, all the troublemakers were called onto the stage, turning it into complete bedlam. Clark grabbed the microphone and tried to quiet them, but the students, long used to ignoring authority, paid no attention, with some even throwing trash at him. He tried to have them sing the school anthem, but when the music began, not a single student sang. Instead, they jeered and made a scene. Looking at this hopeless group of kids, Clark made a bold decision. "You are all expelled.
You are dismissed. You are out of here forever. I wish you well."
The gang of troublemakers didn't believe the principal really dared to expel them and refused to leave, so Clark ordered the security guards to throw them out. Seeing that he was serious, they began to resist, hurling insults and vulgar curses across the stage, but Clark remained completely unfazed. As the last of the troublemakers were cleared out, the stage fell silent, and the audience below grew quiet as well. Clark warned the remaining students that if they didn't behave, they would be next. He told them there was only one reason to be in this school, to learn, to fight for the dreams they wanted, otherwise they were simply wasting time before falling into the abyss of crime, drugs, and death. "If your life doesn't turn out to be a success," he said, "don't blame your parents or anyone else. Blame yourself, because it's your responsibility."
Does everyone understand that? Do all of you understand me? Then welcome to the new Eastside High.
Clark passionately delivered his speech, but the students below showed no reaction, responding to his words with indifference and apathy. That evening, the parents of the expelled students confronted Clark, accusing him of fascist behavior and escalating the matter to a political level, leaving the nearby principal at a loss for what to do. However, Clark retorted, "One bad apple can spoil the whole barrel, let alone over 300 of them. Though I expelled more than 300 students, I also saved the remaining 2,700. His words won applause from the parents of the unexpelled students. Clark continued, "If any parent feels this is unfair, why not go to the school with your children and see what they've been doing all day? With that, he left the venue amid a mix of praise and curses. When Clark returned to the school, a chubby boy was waiting at the gate, one of the 300 expelled that day. He pleaded for another chance. Clark reviewed his record: smoking, drinking, and drug use, each act akin to slow suicide. Clark dragged him to the rooftop, saying, "If you're set on killing yourself, why not jump and make it quick?" Terrified and in tears, the boy finally realized his mistakes and promised to turn over a new leaf. Ultimately, Clark agreed to give him one more chance. From then on, Clark patrolled the school every day with a megaphone, caring for the students like a devoted father. In just a few short days, he not only learned the names of most of the children but even knew all the gossip between them in detail. One day at lunch, the chubby boy started teasing a female classmate again. Seeing his disheveled appearance, Clark punished him by making him sing the school anthem, insisting that no one move while he sang. When the PE teacher simply bent down to pick up a scrap of paper, Clark flew into a rage, ignoring the teacher's face entirely. He publicly scolded him and ordered him to go to the office immediately. Seeing the students perform the anthem in a complete mess, Clark stormed to the music teacher and demanded that within a week, every student must be able to sing the school anthem properly. However, the music teacher, who had always disliked Clark, was preparing for a concert and didn't want to deal with him. This only fueled Clark's fury further. He not only canceled the concert outright, but also publicly fired her on the spot.
Fired! You will hear from my lawyer!
Just as he returned to the office, the PE teacher rushed in, demanding an explanation for what had just happened and why he had been humiliated in front of the students. Clark calmly replied that everyone must obey the rules. When the teacher tried to argue, Clark immediately told him, "You're suspended." Infuriated, the PE teacher overturned a desk in anger. Faced with Clark's authoritarian and domineering style, several teachers, unable to tolerate the pressure, resigned in frustration. Although Clark's methods seemed harsh and unfeeling, they had a tangible effect in this chaotic school. Classrooms were no longer disorderly, students began to focus on learning, and the hallways became orderly. Yet trouble never rested for long. One day, a former expelled drug dealer sneaked into the school and began attacking a student. Hearing the commotion, Clark rushed over. The intruder tried to turn and flee but was blocked. Facing Clark, he drew a small knife, but Clark showed no fear and knocked him to the ground with a precise hook punch. Realizing that the student's safety could not be compromised, Clark immediately ordered all the school gates locked and decreed that during class, no one could enter or leave without his permission. However, this incident drew the attention of the expelled students' parents and the media. Beating up a former student was seen as excessively violent, and locking the school gates violated fire safety regulations. The director of education considered Clark's actions insane and demanded that he not only reinstate the PE teacher but also write a public apology. The two clashed violently and parted on bad terms. Although locking the gates had blocked criminal elements, it also caught the attention of the fire chief, who wanted to enter for an inspection. Clark met him with a baseball bat, saying, "You can inspect all you want, but you must register here first. How else am I supposed to know you're legitimate?" The fire chief gritted his teeth in frustration but could only leave after exchanging a few harsh words. The vice principal warned Clark that this approach wasn't sustainable. Clark told her to request from the government the installation of alarmed doors like those in white schools, so there would be no need to lock the gates again, a demand that was clearly impossible. Yet Clark was not entirely heartless. When the PE teacher returned, he immediately reinstated him, and when he learned of students facing hardships at home, he and the vice principal visited their families. When he found out a student's mother was unemployed and unable to support them, he promised to help her find a suitable job, on the condition that the student would return to school to study. One day, the boy was about to skip class with his friends when Clark happened to catch him in the act. Trying to cover for his friends, the boy pretended nothing was wrong and quickly made up an excuse to leave, but Clark still sensed something was off. He grabbed the boy and led him into the bathroom, where he once again punished everyone by making them sing the school anthem. However, as they started, Clark immediately noticed something was wrong and stopped them, demanding to know who had taught them. When he learned it was the new music teacher, Clark stormed into the music room and questioned why the anthem had been altered. The teacher explained that the students found the original song too boring. Clark snapped, "Did I authorize you to modify the school anthem?" The new teacher was ready to be fired at any moment, but Clark was not entirely stubborn. If a change benefited the students, he would accept it unconditionally. He demanded that the entire school learn this new version of the anthem, and the students cheered with excitement, their spirits lifted by the lively melody. Clark even walked through the halls, greeting everyone along the way. Yet the good mood didn't last long. When the results of the recent school test came out, the pass rate had not improved but dropped, from 38% to 33%. Furious, Clark immediately called together all the teachers for a meeting. One teacher became a target for being just 1 minute late. Clark scolded him sharply. "It's your inefficiency and carelessness that have been ruining the children." To help students catch up academically, Clark required all teachers to provide free weekend tutoring. If students refused to attend, the teachers were to visit their homes, and even parents who couldn't read were expected to come and learn alongside their children. Success, he insisted, required everyone's full participation. He added sternly, "Do not neglect the education of these children now. If your failures continue, one day they will appear on the streets like this, facing the cold barrels of guns." Following this meeting, the school underwent a complete transformation. Classes became engaging and lively, students were eager to participate, and the combination of education with entertainment greatly reignited their passion for learning. Parents also became actively involved. As the final exams approached, the school finally became a sanctuary for learning, not just because the campus had been revitalized, but more importantly because teachers and students were genuinely exchanging knowledge and learning together, even more vibrantly than 20 years ago. Just as everything was moving in a positive direction, the parents of expelled students caused another uproar. One of them went directly to the mayor to negotiate. If she were allowed onto the school board and Clark removed from his post, she could rally hundreds of people to support his re-election. If her demands were not met, she threatened to find a way to oust him. Faced with the stakes for his political future, the mayor had no choice but to agree. While going to the bathroom, Clark ran into the fire chief. Before discussing strategy, the mayor crawled on the floor to ensure no one could overhear their conversation. His plan was to have Clark first raise this year's student test pass rate and then arrest him under the pretext of locking the school gates, a clever move that would both improve the school's performance and satisfy the expelled students' parents. What the mayor didn't know, however, was that someone was hiding inside the bathroom. Clark's informant was stationed near the mayor. To prepare for the approaching fire chief, Clark had equipped every teacher and security guard with walkie-talkies so that when the unlock command came, they could quickly open the gates. That day, the vice principal wanted to show Clark a file, but the busy Clark scolded her and told her to handle it herself. His poor attitude once again stirred dissatisfaction among the staff. After school, the vice principal approached Clark privately and said, "Your authoritarian rule has driven nearly half the staff away. I want you to understand that we stayed, not for you, but for the children. Because of them, we have unconditionally trusted and supported you. Yet instead of respect or gratitude, we received criticism, insults, and abuse. You are too cold and ruthless, they are tired of you, and so am I. I want to be transferred." The vice principal's words left Clark frozen in place for a long moment. With just an hour remaining before the final test, Clark decided to give the students an impassioned pre-exam speech. Before stepping onto the stage, he handed a transfer notice to the vice principal, leaving her completely stunned. Addressing the students, Clark said, "People outside say you're a bunch of hopeless failures, unable to learn, wasting educational resources. I want you to know that you are not trash. Maybe your scores aren't high yet, but you can change all of that and make those fools look at you differently. All we have to do is pass this exam and win. Let them see what Eastside High really is." The students immediately erupted with excitement, shouting their school's name with pride. They then focused wholeheartedly on the test. Meanwhile, the parents of expelled students launched an attack, demanding that the mayor immediately arrest Clark. Upon receiving a message from the fire chief, Clark quickly used the walkie-talkies to instruct everyone to unlock the gates. However, the fire chief also had a walkie-talkie and had recorded everything Clark said. With the evidence irrefutable, Clark had nothing to say. The fire chief handcuffed him, and the expelled students' parents confidently declared that Clark would be removed from his position. Before leaving, Clark turned to the vice principal and said, "I hope you will carry on as I did before." When the students learned that their principal had been arrested, they all rushed outside. Clark ordered every child to return to class, but as they watched him being taken away in the police car, their eyes, no longer indifferent like before, were filled with light and concern for their principal. The director of education felt a sense of relief at the students' transformation. Clark couldn't help but chuckle to himself, thinking, "I always warned the kids to stay away from prison, and yet here I am." Meanwhile, the expelled student's parent was aggressively convening the school board, twisting facts before the new test results came out in an attempt to rally a vote to remove Clark. However, the students' parents refused to believe her lies, as they had witnessed the positive changes in their children. The mayor sat silently, unsure what to say, and did not support her. Not long after, Clark, lying in the detention center, was suddenly awakened by loud noises outside. He got up and looked through the window, and what he saw left him completely stunned. Over 2,700 students were running toward the detention center, raising their fists and repeatedly chanting, "Free Principal Clark!" Seeing this, a broad smile of relief spread across his face. Soon after, the students surrounded the City Hall building. The mayor hurried to the detention center to find Clark, hoping he would let the children leave. Seeing that Clark remained unmoved, the mayor added a subtle threat, saying that if a riot broke out, physical suppression would be inevitable, and the only ones who would get hurt would be the children. Hearing this, Clark finally got out of bed, but he didn't step forward immediately. At that moment, the woman tried to discredit him by highlighting how Clark had chained the doors, yet the children clearly understood that the principal was using this method to protect them, allowing them to study safely. When this perspective failed to sway anyone, the woman argued that Clark did not represent the high school, but the students shot back, saying he not only represents the school, he is like a father to them. For those of them without fathers, he is the only father they know. The woman resorted to claiming that they would get a new, good principal, but the children shouted in unison that all they wanted was Clark to release Clark. Seeing their emotions growing more intense, Clark finally stepped forward, and the children became overwhelmingly excited. Clark told them he wanted them to leave and go home, and that his fate should be determined by the law. Seeing that no one was willing to leave and that his persuasion was useless, the vice principal arrived with a letter sent from the crowd containing the results of their basic skills assessment. To everyone's surprise, all 2,700+ students had passed. The students erupted in cheers, which meant the school board had no reason to remove Clark. He called the mayor to the front, and while many expected Clark to take the opportunity to thank him, Clark instead spoke on behalf of the entire faculty and student body.
You can tell the state to go to hell.
The mayor instantly felt humiliated and quickly turned to leave. Clark no longer had to worry about being removed from the school. The children excitedly began singing the school anthem, and the iron-fisted principal finally realized his true life's purpose. Lean on Me is a 1989 biographical drama directed by John G. Avildsen and starring Morgan Freeman. The film tells the story of a high school notorious for violence and crime, where students are involved in drug use, trafficking, and robbery, virtually every type of misbehavior imaginable. Amid such chaos, Joe Clark is appointed principal, fully aware that his reforms will anger many and could even land him in jail. Undeterred, he implements bold changes that rapidly improve the school's educational standards, revitalizing a failing institution and giving hope to children in a disadvantaged community who had seen little future for themselves. Morgan Freeman delivers a remarkably authentic performance, conveying both Clark's anger and determination in a way that lets the audience share in the students' frustration, while also capturing the tension and helplessness felt by parents. Behind every act of strictness lies a reason, and the moments of genuine warmth at critical times feel sincere and heartfelt. The film moves at a brisk pace, with natural, effortless humor, and the emotional climax is handled perfectly. Principal Clark's authority is not driven by a desire for control but by love and responsibility for his students. His strictness is a means to guide and support them. Beneath his tough exterior lies deep care, showing viewers the dedication, expectation, and accountability that an educator carries. It is precisely this belief that allows Eastside High to once again become a true place of learning and growth.